Mexico is a country in the north of Central America that has been growing rapidly like an energy center in foreign trade for years, intertwined with the United States thanks to its huge production capacity. Recently, this Central American country has been preparing to take one of the boldest steps against the U.S. tariffs. On March 29th, 2025, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum targeted the United States by stating that they will not remain silent against tariffs.
Con medidas arancelarias y no arancelarias que anunciaré en plaza pública el próximo domingo.
Claudia Sheinbaum emphasized that Mexico would use all the economic leverage at its disposal against unilateral steps that threaten export-oriented production and employment. This time, Mexico is seeking to punish not only the traditional automobile sector, but also the rapidly emerging field of electric vehicles and even strategic areas such as agriculture, energy, and metals. Mexico's move coincides with Canada's recent 25% tariffs on the U.S. automotive industry.
President Trump again imposed unjustified tariffs on our nation in violation.
So the U.S. is facing pressure from both Mexico and Canada. President Claudia Sheinbaum has also taken advantage of this situation to escalate the issue of tariffs against the U.S. But what does Sheinbaum's outburst about Trump tariffs mean for the rest of the world? How will Mexico's latest counter move affect the dynamics in the international arena? We will explore the answers to these critical questions together. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay up to date with our content. Let's start in no time with Mexico's retaliatory actions against the United States. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced a comprehensive response to the U.S. tariffs after President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on cars and light trucks next week.
A 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States.
25% tariffs that the president announced on imported cars.
Sheinbaum confirmed on April 3rd that Mexico would give a comprehensive response on what it would do in this situation. Claudia Sheinbaum emphasized that this move does not mean completely closing the doors to work with the U.S. The new tariffs will affect the global automotive sector, but Mexico and Canada will have different conditions due to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Sheinbaum also said that under the U.S., Mexico, and Canada agreement, car importers will be given the opportunity to certify U.S. content, and systems will be put in place so that the 25% tariff will only apply to the value of non-U.S. content. Sheinbaum Pardo added that the U.S. measure, which will take effect on April 3rd, is in addition to other recently introduced tariffs in sectors such as steel and aluminum. Economy Minister Marcelo Ebrard, who participated in the conference remotely from Washington, said that the Mexican government has had several meetings with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick and the Office of Trade Representative Jameson Greer to seek preferential treatment for Mexican products. As we can see, Mexico was both trying to solve its problems with the U.S. and trying to figure out what to do in the absence of a moderate response from Trump. Markets are worried about this tension between the U.S. and Mexico. Any possible counter-taxation from Mexico to the U.S., estimated at 10, 20, or 25%, could radically change global economic dynamics. As Claudia Sheinbaum explained, Mexico's tariff against the U.S. could initially target exports worth $10 to $15 billion. In total, Mexico could inflict $150 billion of damage on the U.S. Most of this damage could be on electric vehicles in the U.S. So let's take a detailed look at how this huge damage ratio will affect the volume of trade between the U.S. and Mexico. Trade between Mexico and the United States represents a huge volume approaching a total of $800 billion, according to 2024 data. The main pillars of this volume are automotive, electronics, machinery and equipment, energy, and agricultural products. Statistics show that the number of Mexican manufacturers exporting goods to the United States is growing rapidly, with Mexico's outward expansion gaining momentum in the last 5 years, especially in the assembly of electric vehicle parts and batteries. Billions of dollars of goods flow through the customs gates almost every day. While an economy of this scale binds the two countries tightly together, one side's protectionist tariff hikes jeopardize the operations of thousands of companies. Trump's recent decision to impose a 25% tariff on non-U.S. cars has upset this balance.
Doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
Mexican manufacturers ship electric vehicle parts, lithium battery components, steel and mechanical equipment to the U.S. market, creating a high value-added cycle. Currently, Mexico supplies around $100 billion worth of cars and spare parts to U.S. automotive giants annually. This figure also includes the supplier industry and EV components. In particular, exports of electric vehicle parts from Mexico to the U.S. in 2024 have increased by more than 40% in the last 5 years. New protectionist tariffs in this sector could slow production lines in both the states of Texas and California. While some political circles in the U.S. see Mexico's stance as bullying, Mexican officials are defending themselves. While under previous administrations, Mexico sometimes backed down, the Sheinbaum era has adopted a tougher line. For this reason, Sheinbaum characterizes Mexico's new response as a rebalancing between the U.S. and Mexico, rather than bullying. A rebalancing could lead to additional tariffs on everything from agricultural products to electronic circuits. This means that fresh fruits and vegetables or snacks that the U.S. buys from Mexico could fetch higher prices in U.S. grocery stores. Similar cost increases could be seen in the construction, energy, and electronics sectors. Of course, there are also concerns in Mexico about these newly announced retaliatory tariffs. There are many in the country who believe that the new tariffs could affect local production in Mexico. Economic experts, on the other hand, remind us that the American market is still the biggest buyer for Mexico, accounting for almost 80% of its exports. Of course, Mexican government officials claim that they are trying to diversify by turning to the growing Asian and European markets. On March 28, 2025, a bureaucrat from the Mexican Foreign Trade Department said that new agreements with China and Japan were on the table, with the option of expanding the existing framework with the European Union. These statements were interpreted as a message of intimidation from Mexico to the United States. This is because digital and green transformation projects are well suited to open new export doors for Mexico. The growth in electric vehicle battery production has attracted mining companies working on lithium reserves to Mexico. The Sheinbaum administration is seizing this opportunity and pursuing policies to reduce dependence on the U.S. On the other hand, Sheinbaum's clear stance has considerable support among the Mexican public. Many Mexicans have long felt fed up with Washington's pressure on immigration and security issues. Mexico's rise in the fields of electric vehicles and next-generation technology reinforces the feeling that it is time to get rid of the paper weakness. Of course, some in the business community emphasize that they need to be careful, that the U.S. market is very important for Mexico. But the Sheinbaum side argues that they are aware of all the risks and that if they remain unresponsive, it will put Mexico in a weak position vis-à-vis the United States. Considering all the risks, Sheinbaum's retaliatory move does not only include automobiles and electric vehicles. The country is also a giant exporter of agriculture. According to 2024 figures, Mexico's agricultural products sold to the U.S. amounted to about $35 billion. Items such as tomatoes, avocados, peppers, juices, and snacks are in high demand in U.S. markets. If Mexico raises tariffs on these products or slows exports, food prices in the U.S. could spike. Especially in states like California, Mexican products fill a significant portion of the shelves. The production model, based on cross-border supply chains, has reinforced the interdependence of both countries in the agricultural sector. So the Sheinbaum government holds a very powerful card. Mexico's Minister of Agriculture has raised tensions further by saying that they will not sell the interests of their people, that they are not obliged to the U.S. market, and that if they want to close the doors, they can pay the price together. After such tough messages, the focus shifted to April 3rd, 2025. President Sheinbaum says that they will announce their steps on this date if Washington does not reverse course. According to backstage information, Mexico is first preparing a tax package on lithium and battery components used for the electric vehicle sector. In the second stage, retaliation in areas such as steel and aluminum may also be on the agenda. In agricultural products, the export restriction option is kept on the table as a last resort, because Mexico knows that a complete loss of the U.S. market would shake the economies of both countries. The lack of any signal from Washington, in the form of a message to review the tariffs, is infuriating the Mexican government. According to experts, Sheinbaum has reached a point where it is hard to back down, and the Trump administration is determined to take a hard line. Add Canada's April 2nd, 2025 retaliation package to this picture, and the U.S. could suddenly face a major trade front on its northern and southern borders. Some unnamed White House officials believe that Mexico and Canada cannot really afford a full-scale trade war. On the morning of March 28th, Mexican media were discussing questions such as whether U.S. firms might revise their investment plans in Mexico. Some doubt that Mexico will be able to develop new projects with Asian and European partners if tensions continue. Some argue that the share of the U.S. market could fall slightly, but that it could be offset by new gateways to the world. Of course, this is a long-term strategy. In the short term, the Mexican economy may experience fluctuations. The Sheinbaum administration is already aware of this. The president often repeats his rhetoric that they will ensure independence in the long term, at the expense of short-term pain. Turning to electric vehicles, a major transformation is taking place across North America. While the U.S. is providing incentives to accelerate the replacement of gasoline-powered vehicles with electric models, Mexico and Canada have become critical stakeholders in this production chain. If this ecosystem is hit by new tariffs, the strategy of global brands will also be affected. Giant manufacturers from Europe and Asia are planning to use Mexico as a hub, but the U.S. tariffs complicate that plan. We are not enemies of anyone, but we are not under anyone's yoke. And when unilateral impositions are made on us, we have to respond, Sheinbaum said. This sentence has become a slogan shared by Mexicans on social media under the title, "The Spirit of National Independence." We are a trading giant. Our hands are not tied, the people say in support of their government. The rest of the world is watching this challenge with interest. Some commentators in Europe say, cracks are growing in the North American trade union. This could open up new opportunities for EU-Mexico relations. In Asia, China and Japan in particular are keen to strengthen their companies' ability to enter the Mexican market and access the U.S. from there. So Mexico's abandonment of the "we have no choice but the U.S. anyway" approach offers a new route for global supply chains. Some say Sheinbaum has succeeded in getting Mexico to take itself more seriously as a regional power. Others warn a trade war of this magnitude would hurt everyone, and Mexico could lose its bridge position. Perhaps there is merit in both approaches. If tensions continue, of course, there will be no long-term winners. But Sheinbaum seems determined. We will defend our honor. We will pursue a fully independent trade policy. But can the U.S. side back down? Is there any hope for this scenario? As of today, while the U.S. administration keeps talking about Trump tariffs, Mexico and Canada have almost simultaneously put the retaliation card on the table. Canada has set April 2nd as the date, Mexico April 3rd. It is unclear whether there is panic on the Washington front, because the Trump line says, "They are dependent on us, don't be afraid," but the data on the ground does not show that. especially since Mexico's share in the supply of electric vehicle parts is rising rapidly. The imposition of additional taxes in this segment could cause production costs in the U.S. to jump. Moreover, with Mexico's steel and aluminum move, the construction and automotive sectors could be further strained. Taxes on agriculture could push consumer prices up. In other words, there may be annoying consequences in the U.S. domestic market in a short time. Despite all these risks, the Trump administration's insistence on the no-compromise policy inflames the anger on the Mexican side. President Sheinbaum said, "No one should feel sorry for us. We are a strong country, and we will take every necessary step," emphasizing that the rest is irreversible. The most interesting scenario at the moment is whether the U.S. will risk a confrontation with Mexico and Canada at the same time. On the one hand, the giant energy and automotive partner to the north, and the giant manufacturing base to the south. Both are indispensable to the flow of U.S. trade. Some commentators have suggested that Washington might try to find a deal with one and keep the pressure on the other. But for now, Canada and Mexico are pursuing their own agendas. Even without a common bilateral front, retaliatory wins from both sides could send the U.S. economy into turmoil. After all, these two neighboring countries, which have a significant impact on America's trade balance, could pull the plug at any moment. Automakers, agricultural companies, tech giants, and energy firms are worried about the uncertainty. It is not known whether a trilateral diplomacy table will be established soon, or whether everyone will insist on their rests. For now, Sheinbaum says, the door to negotiations is open, but no caving in. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made similar statements. On the U.S. side, there is no clear signal other than, "We will not back down." This whole picture has put the future of the North American free trade area into question once again. The model that has been presented for years as the most successful regional trade agreement in history is now showing multiple cracks. Electric vehicles and high-tech products are the most obvious areas of this crack. We will consolidate our position in the new era, Mexico says, trying to show that the U.S. does not have the advantage it once had. Sheinbaum says we will not depend on a single market opening the door to strong relations with Asia and Europe. This global geopolitical shift may well shift production and trade flows in the region in different directions in the coming years. From the broadest perspective, Mexico's stance is likely to be remembered for a long time. For decades, the country has had a whatever the U.S. says goes mentality. This attitude has never changed on issues such as migration, security, and customs. Whenever the issue came up, Mexico often felt obliged to take the heat. The new chapter that began with the election of President Sheinbaum popularized the motto, "From now on, we will show our own strength." While this is economically risky, politically, it gives the country prestige and a sense of unity. Local polls show that more than 60% of the population supports Sheinbaum on this issue. In short, the Trump tariffs issue has become a test of Mexico's independent identity. As April 3rd, 2025 approaches, tensions are likely to escalate. It remains to be seen what steps Mexico will take, how Washington will respond, and what will happen in the automotive and electric vehicle markets. It is also very critical after this date. While some expect a last-minute peace deal, others predict that neither side can back down. A trade war is inevitable. Meanwhile, Canada's April 2nd move is also on the horizon. If the neighbors to the north and south play their retaliatory cards at the same time, the U.S. economy could feel the tremors. Right now, the Trump administration is in a state of silent resistance. They insist on tariffs, saying it is our duty to prevent unfair trade. Mexico, on the other hand, is saying, "You are the one doing the injustice. We are obliged to retaliate." There are huge numbers, $800 billion of U.S. trade with Mexico, $900 billion of U.S. trade with Canada. In such a huge market, even a small upheaval could affect the future of millions of workers. Mexico could also cause $150 billion in damage to the U.S. We will probably have a clearer picture of what this chaos will turn into in the time to come. Thank you for watching.